Showtime! The Capital G Show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here, talking about Link summoning, actually more so Link monsters, and why shouldn't we? Links have been easily, in my experience, the most divisive mechanic Konami has introduced into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! They definitely add skill to the game, but in a way they do kind of limit the playability of many former archetypes, and this has been something that almost everyone in the community has acknowledged at this point. I've always thought that the simplest solution to this dilemma was to give older archetypes Link monsters, and with the recent announcement of the Link Brains pack, it looks like Konami is going to do just that. I think it's a perfect time to discuss this topic. Now let's be clear, I'll primarily be focusing on archetypes that desperately need Link monsters because they've been extremely limited thanks to the new mechanic and the rules that it puts in place, but I'll also include archetypes where Link monsters just make a whole bunch of sense and just seem practical. So without further ado, welcome to the top 10 archetypes that must receive a Link monster, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hierarchy. Number 10, Lunalight. So I was going to set aside all personal bias and make a completely fair list based on merit. But that's stupid, so I decided to kick things off with my favorite archetype. At first glance, Lunalights might not seem that they are in need of a Link monster. After all, they are what I like to call a fusion up deck, meaning they use fusion monsters to summon more powerful ones into the deck, gradually achieves Leo Dancer. This is still completely doable. The problem is, ask anyone who's actually played the deck and they'll tell you one Leo Dancer is generally not enough for this super aggressive deck, the OTK. Sure, one Leo Dancer works fine in the anime, but in IRL Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you have double the light points, you generally need double the Leo Dancer, as she will cap out at about 7,000 damage without the aid of things like Purple Butterfly or Tenki. A Link 2 would not only allow the deck to establish its double Leo Dancer OTKs, but it would actually make cards like White Rabbit, Lunalight Perfume, and Tiger even more valuable than they already are in the deck. Number 9, Gladiator Beast. Had Glads not got their recent support, truth be told, I probably wouldn't have even put them on this list. After all, they're a contact fusion, just like Ritual Beast, meaning the extra deck is never really clogged because they can usually just tag out the fusion monster and open it back up again. But the new fusion monsters create a serious problem. They allow Glads to summon other fusion monsters straight from the extra deck for some really explosive plays, or at least they would if that was even possible anymore. If you don't have a Link monster on the field, it's just not going to happen. Currently, the new fusion monsters can't even resolve their effects, which begs the question, why even summon them in the first place? Luckily, Konami themselves have acknowledged this obvious blunder, and Glads are one of the archetypes that will get a Link monster in the Link Brains pack. Number 8, Mecha Phantom Beast. I want to be perfectly clear here. Mecha Phantom Beasts do not actually need a Link monster, but damn, it just makes so much sense to give the archetype one. The second it was announced that tokens could be used for Link summoning, many players realized that the deck was going to have a legitimate edge when it came to making the new mechanic very useful, especially considering that tokens go way further in Link summoning than they do in Synchro summoning, which Mecha Phantom Beast can also do. Giving Mecha Phantom Beast a Link monster would be a great way to make up for the deck's wasted potential during the Zexal era and to also maximize the deck's ability. Number 7, Dragunity and Karakuri. I lump these two synchro decks together because they're both facing similar problems in regards to the new rules. Both decks can summon a 7 or 8-star synchro relatively easy, but then decks that excel at going further beyond basically are tied down by that one monster. Karakuri were designed to be lightning fast, which is why you usually see them drop multiple berets or Beretos in a turn to pull off some really flashy OTKs. These were relatively easy considering that each boss monster summons another Karakuri straight from the deck, so you're halfway to summoning another synchro monster. Dragunity, on the other hand, is supposed to operate like a well-oiled machine. Once the deck has its Dragon's Ravine and a Phalanx in the grave, each turn is basically going to give you new life for an extremely potent level 8 synchro to help you improve your situation. However, unless you're starting with Psyframe Lord Omega, that just can't happen anymore unless you want your monsters dying each turn. Both decks just feel like shells of themselves right now. Number 6, Wind Up. Take into consideration that Wind Up would also need Wind Up Carrier Mighty to be unbanned like it is in the OCG for this to actually even matter, but if that happened, you could see a very strong deck return to prosperity. During the early days of Zexal, spamming Mighty was all the rage. After all, Mighty grabbed Rat straight from the deck, and that allowed for some really cool plays. When Wind Up Carrier Mighty went to 1, people simply changed the advanced combos, and you started seeing massive shock lock turns. As it currently stands, the Wind Up player can can kind of do neither one of those, to be honest, and the archetype feels like it has absolutely no identity at all. I mean, you can still Magician Shark your opponent and get a bunch of wind-up monsters on the field, but then what do? I guess you can make some shitty generic rank 4 play, but that's not going to really impress anybody, and a lot of times it's not actually going to help your win condition. Windups need to get back to their bread and butter, which is making those explosive boards, and if they got a Link monster and they got Mighty back, I think they might be able to get there. Number 5, Fluffle and Gem Knight. So these two archetypes share the same exact problem. They both want to go all out fairly quickly, and they both want to fusion summon a billion times in a turn so that they can OTK their opponent. Gem Knights, especially considering you can get Gem Knight fusion back from the graveyard and activate it an unlimited amount of times in a turn. Fluffles, in an ideal situation, want to nuke the board using Tiger, then use Fright for fusion to bring back Wolf to seal the deal, as it can have so many different attacks in a turn. It can generally spell doom for your opponent. With the new rules and regulations, the first part of that play is fine, but where do you go from there? If you're not actually able to OTK in a hyper-aggressive fusion deck that's designed to kill your opponent within the first couple of turns, then what's really the point? It feels like you're a cobra without fangs. Number 4, Buster Blader. I feel really bad for Buster Blader because it's essentially had its best win condition taken away. Putting Destruction Swordsman and Buster Blader on the field together presents an amazing lock. Not only does it force all your opponent's monsters to permanently stay in defense mode, but they also can't activate their effects on the field either. With Swordsman's ability to inflict piercing damage, it can feel like shooting fish in a barrel when you have this lock. Obviously, the problem here is both monsters need the extra monster zone, and they obviously can't share it. This means that your lock is currently impossible, or if you can find a way to get a Link monster and still have resources to summon both of those, I guess it's possible. And now that I think about it, this is actually pretty weird considering that Konami specifically gave Buster Blader more support in Raging Tempest with the sole purpose of making these monsters easier to get on the field, only to then make the play impossible 6 months later. Number 3, Different Dimension Demons, also known as DDD. To say that DDD still can't summon some hellishly powerful boss monsters at will would definitely be a lie, but to say that the fields that they make on average now are not even close to the standard that the deck was used to earlier this year, yeah, that's just speaking the truth. Much like the powerful leaders that DDD Extra Deck monsters are named after, one soul cannot replace an army, and as of right now, that's basically life for DDD, an archetype with an amazing collection of Synchro, Ixie, and fusion monsters that's currently stuck at Yamcha-like power levels. Number 2, Super Quanto. So this is like Buster Blader times 2. It's really bad when you don't have your best lock and win condition available to you. It's another thing completely when an archetype can't even summon its own boss monster. Great Magnus is already a pretty difficult card to get on the board as it is because it requires obviously 3 Ixie monsters and a field spell, but how exactly are you supposed to get those 3 Ixie monsters on the field under the new rules and regulations of Reigns? I mean, it's nearly impossible. It will require a ton of cards and energy that, let's just be real, ain't nobody trying to spin. And then this deck used to actually be able to do Great Magnus turn 1, so obviously right now that's just completely out the window. In fact, Super Quanto are in such a difficult situation because Magnus's summoning requirements are so unique that I don't even think that a normal average Link monster would do. In fact, it would have to be a superb Link monster, maybe something that would actually have to count on the field as a face-up Super Quanto Ixie monster. Whatever the solution is, I don't exactly know, but I just know it needs to happen. This deck has to get blessed with a Link monster. Honorable mentions include Enjoy, Cardians, Six Samurai, Cyber Dragons, Heroes, most notably Elemental, Destiny, and Mask. Well, basically all of them, just not shitty evil heroes. And finally, Fabled. And finally, to our numero uno, Burning Abyss. This should have been obvious from the beginning because, well, people have kind of been saying this from the beginning. Unless Burning Abyss get a Link monster, the deck will be completely useless and it'll just cease to function. See, Burning Abyss, unlike every other archetype in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, can't use other Link monsters. The Link monster specifically has to have Burning Abyss in the name, otherwise the rest of the BAs are just going to constantly blow themselves up at every opportunity, and you're not going to be able to establish a board of monsters. And yeah, I'm sure that people out there are going to mention that there are a couple workarounds to this situation, like Skill Drain and Tour Guide from the Underworld, but those are limited cards, and if you're going to rely on limited cards just for your deck to even function properly, then you're already in a very, very bad situation, and you have no hope of your deck ever becoming meta again unless you get some type of future support. Now, Konami has wisened up, and they have given us the confirmation that Burning Abyss will be receiving a Link Monster, but that just shows that this one was kind of obvious from the beginning. So let me know what you guys think of the list. Did I leave your favorite archetype off of it? And what other archetypes do you guys believe should get a Link Monster? Because let's be real, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has so many different archetypes, and I probably missed a couple of them that I shouldn't have. But either way, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching as always, and subscribe if you have not already. Subscribing makes life happy.